When apartment manager Derek Wilson looked with disdain at the scruffy man in faded jeans and a washed-out t-shirt, he didn't realize he was about to make one of the biggest mistakes of his professional life. "You can't afford this place," Derek muttered, barely concealing his contempt. The words came out sharply, as if designed to wound. He didn't know that the man standing in front of him, wearing a weathered baseball cap and looking nothing like his red carpet persona, was one of the most beloved actors in Hollywood, Keanu Reeves. Derek's smug confidence faltered as he glanced down at the rental application. His eyes scanned lazily, expecting a forgettable name. But there it was, Keanu Reeves. For a moment, the color drained from his face. He looked up again, his gaze now unsure, almost searching. But this wasn't just an awkward run-in with a celebrity. It was the beginning of a story that would unravel his tightly held assumptions and change the lives of everyone involved. Before we continue the story, tell us in the comment below, where are you watching from? And if you like these kinds of stories, make sure to subscribe to the channel, because tomorrow at 7 p.m. we have an amazing fresh story lined up for you. It was a sweltering summer day in Los Angeles, the kind where the heat seemed to cling to your skin. Keanu had entered the West the Heights apartment complex, not for himself, but to help Miguel Sanchez, the son of a close friend, find affordable housing. At 55, Keanu looked far from the polished image seen in magazines. His beard was unkempt, his hair shoved back under his cap. Yet his posture remained calm, almost zen-like. Miguel had fallen on hard times, and Keanu, true to his reputation for kindness, had offered to help. Derek Wilson had been managing West the Heights for 8 years. In that time, he'd cultivated what he considered a sixth sense for tenants. He prided himself on spotting red flags from a mile away. When he saw Keanu and Miguel step into the leasing office, his mind had already formed its judgment. To Derek, the older man looked homeless, and the younger one, though neatly dressed, radiated uncertainty. Not ideal candidates. He barely looked up as Keanu approached the desk with a friendly smile. "We're here about the one-bedroom apartment," Keanu said, his tone warm. Derek typed something on his computer, then said without emotion, "Rent is $2,100 per month, utilities not included. There's a security deposit, first and last month's rent due at signing, and a $50 application fee per person." He emphasized each number as if daring them to flinch. "That sounds fair," Keanu replied without hesitation. "Miguel here is interested in applying." Derek finally raised his eyes, squinting suspiciously. "And you are?" "Just a family friend," Keanu said. "I'm helping him get settled." Derek's lips curled slightly. "Well, we have strict income requirements. The tenant must make at least 3 times the monthly rent." Miguel, a slim young man with kind brown eyes, nodded seriously. "I understand. I just started working at Mercer Health Systems as a nursing assistant. I can provide proof of employment." "Let me guess," Derek scoffed. "You're making what, $20 an hour?" His attention turned to Keanu. "No offense, sir, but judging by your appearance, I assume you're not in a position to co-sign." A flicker of emotion, not anger, but deep disappointment, crossed Keanu's face. Miguel looked at his shoes, visibly embarrassed. "Actually," Keanu said calmly, "I was planning to cover the deposit and the first 6 months of rent to help Miguel get established. After that, he'll take care of it on his own." Derek laughed sharply. "Sure. And I suppose you just have $20,000 lying around?" "Something like that," Keanu answered, unfazed. Derek leaned forward, smug. "Look, I'll be direct. You can't afford this place. This is a luxury building. We have doctors, lawyers, executives here. We're not a charity. Maybe try somewhere more. Your level." The prejudice was thinly veiled, but before Keanu could reply, he gently placed a hand on Derek's desk. "I'd like to speak with your supervisor," he said, his voice still peaceful but firm. Derek smirked. "I'm the property manager. There is no one else. The owner lives in New York and isn't involved in tenant affairs. I have full authority here." Keanu nodded thoughtfully, then reached into his pocket, pulling out a leather wallet. He slid a business card across the desk. "In that case, you can have the owner contact me directly." Derek picked up the card, ready to dismiss it, but his smirk disappeared as he read the name. His eyes darted from the card to Keanu's face, then back again. "Keanu Reeves? The actor?" "Yes," Keanu replied simply. Derek's entire demeanor changed in an instant. His posture straightened, his voice softened. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Reeves. I didn't recognize you. Of course, we'd be honored to have your friend as a tenant." Let me get the application started right away. But Keanu shook his head. Actually, I think we'll pass. Miguel deserves to live somewhere he'll be treated with respect, regardless of who his friends are or what he does for a living. As they turned to leave, Derek panicked. Please wait. I made a terrible mistake. Let me show you our best unit. It's available immediately. Keanu paused at the door. That won't be necessary, but I'd like you to write down the owner's contact information. I think they should know how potential tenants are being treated. Trembling, Derek scribbled the details on a notepad. As he handed the sheet to Keanu, his stomach dropped. The name of the LLC matched the production company on Keanu's business card. You own this building. Derek stammered. It's a recent investment, Keanu confirmed. I was curious to see how the property was being managed. Now I know. 2 days later, Rachel Kim arrived unannounced at West the Heights. At 42, Rachel had a reputation for fixing troubled properties. She had been hired by the new ownership group to evaluate all recent acquisitions. West the Heights hadn't been on her immediate list until a disturbing email changed her schedule. Derek was in the middle of showing an apartment to a young professional couple when the receptionist interrupted. Someone from corporate is here to see you. His stomach dropped. No visits had been scheduled. Back at the office, an elegant woman in a beige blazer sat confidently at his desk, reviewing files on his computer. Mr. Wilson, she said, standing up. I'm Rachel Kim, Regional Director for Starlight Properties. Her voice was pleasant but firm. Ms. Kim, we weren't expecting you. I would have prepared. That's exactly why I came without notice, she cut in. We've received some troubling reports about your management practices. Derek's collar suddenly felt too tight. I assure you, everything is in order. Rachel raised an eyebrow. Really? Because I have emails from multiple applicants who were discouraged from applying despite meeting all financial qualifications. I was just following tenant profile guidelines. What guidelines are those? Because Starlight has a strict anti-discrimination policy. She turned the screen to reveal tenant application records. Can you explain why applicants with Hispanic or Asian last names were denied 3 times more often than others with similar financials? Sweat began to bead on Derek's forehead. That's just coincidence. We choose the most qualified. And what about your interaction 2 days ago? Derek's heart skipped. That was a misunderstanding. I didn't recognize Mr. Reeves. So you admit you would have treated them differently if you had? Rachel's tone was ice. That's the problem, Mr. Wilson. Our policy is to treat all applicants with dignity and respect, regardless of who they are. I've successfully run this property for 8 years, Derek argued. We have a 96% occupancy rate and 99.9% rent collection. By turning away qualified applicants based on your personal biases, Rachel replied. That's not just unethical. It's potentially illegal. She stood and adjusted her blazer. I'll be conducting a full audit of all applications from the past 2 years. In the meantime, you're suspended pending investigation. Please turn in your keys and access cards. Derek's face flushed with anger and shame. You can't do this. This is my building. Rachel didn't flinch. No, Mr. Wilson. It's not your building. And based on what I've seen so far, it won't be your job for much longer. Miguel sat at his small kitchen table, eyes fixed on his laptop screen, the weight of discouragement hanging heavy in the air. Every apartment listing he scrolled through seemed more hopeless than the last. Though he'd finally landed a job at Mercer Health Systems, a prestigious hospital network, his starting salary as a nursing assistant barely scraped the surface of what was needed to afford a safe place to live in Los Angeles. His current studio apartment was in a sketchy part of town. Just last week, his car had been broken into for the second time. The job at Mercer was supposed to be his fresh start, but with a nearly 2-hour commute each way, it left him drained and defeated. If only he could find a place closer to work, he could study for his RN certification. That thought alone gave him hope. A sudden knock at the door pulled him from his spiral. Peeking through the peephole, his eyes widened in shock. Keanu Reeves was standing there, holding a brown paper bag from a local deli. Brought lunch, Keanu said when Miguel opened the door. Hope you like pastrami. Miguel quickly cleared textbooks off the small table. Mr. Reeves, you didn't have to come all the way out here. I'm still kind of embarrassed about everything that happened. You've got nothing to be embarrassed about, Keanu replied, pulling out the sandwiches. And please call me Keanu. They ate in a comfortable silence for a few minutes. Then Keanu spoke again. I wanted to apologize for putting you in that situation. I should have known my little experiment could backfire." "Experiment?" Miguel asked. Keanu nodded. "I recently invested in a few properties around the city, including that apartment complex. I wanted to see how management treated everyday people. Apparently, not very well." Miguel shook his head. "It's nothing I haven't experienced before, but I really appreciate that you tried to help." "That's exactly why I'm here," Keanu said, setting down his sandwich and pulling out his phone. "I got a call from Rachel Kim, the new manager at West the Heights. They'd like to offer you the apartment at a reduced rate as an apology." Miguel's eyes widened. "That's incredibly generous, but I don't want special treatment just because I know you." "It's not special treatment," Keanu said gently. "Rachel's launching a new program for essential healthcare workers, 15% off market rate for qualified applicants. You'd be the first, but they plan to expand it." Miguel was quiet for a moment. I don't know what to say." "Just think about it," Keanu said with a smile. "It would cut your commute from 2 hours to 20 minutes. That kind of change matters." Miguel nodded. "It would change everything." "Then think it over," Keanu said, standing to leave. "And Miguel, what happened with that manager? That was wrong. But don't let one man's prejudice take anything away from what you've accomplished. You earned that job at Mercer. You deserve a safe, comfortable place to live." After Keanu left, Miguel sat quietly, absorbing everything. Finally, he picked up his phone and dialed the number Keanu had left. A week later, Derek Wilson sat across from his lawyer in a sterile conference room at the regional office of Starlight Properties. The audit had been completed in record time. The findings revealed a pattern of discriminatory practices that left no room for defense. "They're offering you a severance package," the lawyer explained. 4 weeks' pay in exchange for signing a non-disclosure agreement and agreeing not to sue for wrongful termination. Derek scoffed. "They should be worried I'll sue them for wrongful termination." The lawyer's expression darkened. "Derek, they have documented proof that you systematically discriminated against minority applicants. The severance is a courtesy, probably because they want to avoid a public scandal. If you fight this, they could sue you for damages." "This is all because of that actor and his charity case," Derek muttered bitterly. "No," the lawyer corrected sharply. "It's because you broke the law. Consider yourself lucky they're not pressing charges. Take the severance and move on." With trembling hands, Derek signed the documents. His future was suddenly uncertain. 8 years of what he thought was successful property management had unraveled in a single week. All because he had made assumptions about a man in worn jeans and a baseball cap. As he exited the building for the last time, a small box of personal items in his arms, Derek saw a familiar face approaching. Miguel, now apparently moving into West the Heights despite Derek's best efforts to keep him out. Their eyes met. Miguel hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. Derek considered saying something rude, but the fight had gone out of him. He stepped aside without a word and walked toward his car. 3 months later, Rachel Kim hosted a modest gathering in the community lounge at West the Heights. The occasion? The official launch of the Essential Workers Housing Initiative, now expanded to include not just healthcare workers, but teachers, first responders, and social workers. The building had transformed under Rachel's leadership. The tenant mix was more diverse, community events were regular, and for the first time in years, there was a waiting list. Miguel had become something of an unofficial ambassador for the program. He helped new residents feel welcome, creating a sense of community that had been missing under Derek's management. "I want to thank everyone who made this possible," Rachel said, addressing the gathered residents and members of the local press. "Especially our ownership group, who recognized that sustainable housing shouldn't be a luxury for the wealthy." She pointed toward the back of the room, where Keanu stood quietly, trying not to attract attention. A few people recognized him and whispered excitedly, but most were focused on Rachel's announcement that the affordable housing program would expand to 3 more properties in the area. After the presentation, Miguel approached Keanu. "I never properly thanked you," he said. "Not just for the apartment, but for standing up for me that day." Keanu shook his head. "You don't need to thank me. How's the nursing program going?" Miguel's face lit up. "I'm on track to finish my RN certification 6 months early. Cutting my commute made all the difference. I even started a study group for other healthcare workers in the building." "That's what this was about," Keanu said, gesturing to the room where residents mingled, shared stories, and laughed. Not just housing, community. Rachel joined them with news. I thought you both might want to know. Derek Wilson has been blacklisted from property management across Southern California. Word got out about what happened here. Miguel's expression turned thoughtful. I'm not happy he lost his livelihood, but I'm glad he can't do to others what he tried to do to me. The real estate industry has been slow to address these kinds of discriminatory practices, Rachel said. Sometimes it takes a high-profile case to spark real change. Any regrets? Keanu asked Miguel. About moving here, after everything that happened? Miguel looked around at what had become not just his apartment building, but his community. None. For the first time since I lost my parents, I feel like I belong somewhere. I can focus on my career instead of just surviving. That's everything. As the event wound down, a local journalist approached Keanu. Mr. Reeves, can you comment on your involvement in this housing initiative? I'm just an investor, Keanu said modestly. The real story is about people like Miguel and Rachel who are building something meaningful here. But it was your actions that exposed the discriminatory practices, wasn't it? Keanu paused. Sometimes you have to see things firsthand to understand what needs to change. I learned as much from this experience as anyone else. And what did you learn, Mr. Reeves? That people should be judged by their character, not their appearance or their bank account, Keanu replied. He glanced over at Miguel, who was helping an elderly resident with her coat, and that giving people a chance often leads to surprising results. Later that evening, Miguel walked through the now familiar halls of West the Heights. He paused at a window, gazing out at the city lights. His phone buzzed with a message from his supervisor at Mercer Health, confirming his acceptance into their accelerated nursing program, a dream that had seemed impossible just months earlier. He thought back to that uncomfortable day in the leasing office, when Derek Wilson had looked at him and seen only stereotypes and assumptions. How different his life might be now if Keanu hadn't been there, and how many others had been turned away without anyone to stand up for them. Laughter echoed from a nearby apartment. Some new neighbors were hosting a dinner party. They had invited Miguel, but he declined, needing a quiet evening to study. Still, the invitation meant something. It meant he belonged here. As he returned to his apartment, Miguel made a promise to himself. When he earned his RN degree, he would find ways to pay forward the kindness Keanu had shown him. Not with money, but with the same simple human dignity everyone deserved. Back in his small kitchen, textbooks spread across the table, Miguel began to study. Out his window, he could see the hospital where he worked, close enough now that he could walk on nice days. The path that once seemed so hard was now lit with possibility, made real by a chance encounter with a humble celebrity and the exposed prejudice of a bitter property manager. What Derek Wilson had failed to understand was that affordability wasn't just about money. It was about creating spaces where essential workers like Miguel could thrive, contribute, and build community. It was about recognizing the value of people beyond their appearance, their fame, or their income bracket. And sometimes, it was about a scruffy man in worn-out jeans who stood up and said, "This is wrong. We can do better." But even stories of reckoning can find room for grace. Months later, in a quiet cafe far from West the Heights, Keanu met Derek Wilson. Derek was different now, quieter, humbled, and clearly still navigating the ruins of his former certainty. Keanu, ever gracious, listened without judgment. "I made a mess of things," Derek admitted. "I thought I knew people just by looking at them. I was wrong." Keanu nodded. "Everyone makes mistakes. What matters is what you do next." He slid a folder across the table. Inside was an offer, not for a position in property management, but a role in a nonprofit Keanu supported, focused on workforce development and community building. "It's not glamorous," Keanu said, "but it's honest work. It's a place to start again." Derek stared at the paper, overwhelmed. "Why would you help me after everything I did?" "Because I believe people can change," Keanu answered. "And because second chances shouldn't be reserved only for those who look the part." Derek accepted. And though the road ahead would still require work and growth, it was a road, something many never get. At the end, in a world quick to judge, may we slow down long enough to listen. Everyone carries stories we can't see, struggles we may never know. The true measure of character lies not in how we treat the powerful, but in how we respond to those with nothing to offer us. This story is a reminder that kindness costs nothing, but can change everything. Let us create a world where dignity isn't earned, but honored, and where the smallest act of decency might just be the spark that changes a life. Thank you for watching. If the story warms your heart, subscribe to the channel and click the screen for more inspirational stories of resilience, compassion, and hope.